Welcome, beloved viewers. Today, we'll continue our visit to the Bahai House of Worship for the North American continent in Wilmette, Illinois, USA, where we spoke with several gracious Baha'is about their faith. Baha-u-llah, an enlightened master and a prophet of the Baha'i Faith, proclaimed that the time has come for humanity's unification into one global society. He revealed new laws and teachings for a unified civilization. Today, in order to make the world a better place, Baha'is take action for social causes.
We've been very active since the beginning of the faith in promoting some of our core spiritual principles that really have a social impact.
Mr. Glenn Fulmer is the Director of Communications for the U.S. Baha'i National Center.
The vision of the Baha'i Faith is that we're very close to being able to establish a world order of justice and peace and unity for everyone. But in order to get there, there's some basic things that have to be transformed in the human spirit. So we have to achieve the equality of men and women. That's one of the core fundamental principles of the faith. We cannot have world peace and the oneness of humanity unless we achieve the equality of men and women. So we work at the diplomatic level. We have an office in Washington, D.C. We have representatives working at the UN. We work with other non-governmental organizations on promoting the status of women. One example of that is that when the Baha'i Faith was first initiated in Iran, the first thing the Baha'is did was establish schools for girls, because you need to educate the girls. And so we work in many places around the world promoting the education of the girl child. Another example of our work, it has to do with human rights and religious freedom. Another one you mentioned is the environment and sustainable development. And we've been part of something called the UN Decade for Education on Sustainable Development. So the UN has this long process right now of trying to educate people to what it means to have sustainable development. And so we've been very active in that effort as well.
Mr. Fulmer shared with us how prophets and masters are revered in the Baha'i Faith.
The term we use is called manifestation of God. That's what Baha'u'llah said. He was a manifestation of God. And we consider that all of the founders of the major religions, so that's Muhammad and Jesus Christ and Moses and Krishna and Buddha, that all of them were manifestations of God and had the same station, which the way Baha'u'llah described it, he used many sort of allegories to explain to us who he was and what his spiritual nature was. And he said one example is a mirror, that we can't see God directly, but that he's like a perfect mirror, that through him we can understand the nature of God. And so all of the attributes and qualities of God are perfectly reflected in his being. And so that the way we can draw closer to God is by studying the lives and the teachings of these messengers. And Baha'is study the Bible, study the Quran, study some of the other sacred scriptures, because they're all records of the true religion of God.
Baha'u'llah's spiritual successor was his son, Abdul-Baha, who is known lovingly as the Master. Abdul-Baha was eulogized as the essence of virtue and wisdom, of knowledge and generosity, and is regarded as a perfect role model for all Baha'is. Abdul-Baha clearly stated many times that humans are meant to be vegetarians.
As humanity progresses, meat will be used less and less, for the teeth of man are not carnivorous. The human teeth, the molars, are formed to grind grain. The front teeth, the incisors, are for fruits, etc. It is, therefore, quite apparent according to the implements for eating that human's food is intended to be grain and not meat. When humankind is more fully developed, the eating of meat will gradually cease.
Abdul-Baha also stated that animals feel pain even more than humans and called for treating them with utmost kindness.
Sensibility is the same whether you harm man or animal. There is no difference. Nay, rather, cruelty to the animal is more painful, because man has a tongue, and he sighs, complains, and groans when he receives an injury. Educate the children in their infancy in such a way that they may become exceedingly kind and merciful to the animals. If an animal is sick, they should endeavor to cure it. If it is hungry, they should feed it. If it is thirsty, they should satisfy its thirst. If it is tired, they should give it rest.
Abdul-Baha, who was the son of the founder of the faith, Baha-u-llah, he's explained that vegetarianism really is the natural diet for humanity, and that little by little, gradually, as we mature and develop, that we will eventually reach a fully vegetarian diet, and that is the healthiest for the individual and for society and for the planet, for the environment, that eventually we'll get there. There is this idea that eventually humanity will adopt a vegetarian diet.
How do the followers of the Baha'i Faith practice spiritually? For instance, what is your daily or weekly practice?
So at the individual level, we as Baha'is have a practice of reading from the writings of the Baha'i Faith. We consider Baha'u'llah's writings as divine scripture, as the word of God for this day. And Baha'u'llah revealed dozens of major works and prayers and meditations, and they're really quite beautiful prayers and writings. So we have a practice of reading from those writings every morning and every evening as a way of being mindful and continually deepening our understanding of God and feeling God's presence in our lives in a very real way. We're connecting with God on a daily basis. We also have a practice of obligatory prayer. So there's actually 3 prayers that we can choose from. There's a very short one, and there's a medium one, and there's a long one. We have a series of what we call core activities, which is devotional gatherings. We get together in our homes for prayer. We have study circles where we get together and study the writings of Baha'u'llah and try to put them into practice in our lives. We have spiritual education for children, so kind of like Sunday school, where we get the kids together and talk about virtues and religious history and that sort of thing.
We asked the Baha'is whom we met to share about what brings them joy from being a member of the Baha'i Faith.
There are actually 2 things that bring me a lot of joy, that the faith has given me both clarity and purpose. And clarity meaning what has gone before in my life. I became a Baha'i when I was 40 years old, so I had lived a lot before then, and I was from an interfaith family. My mother was Jewish and my father was Catholic, and my brother and I had been educated in the Catholic Church, and I had encountered people from a wide range of backgrounds, including the fact that when I lived in college, my roommate was a born-again Christian. So I was always very curious about these people and their various religions, and had exposure to it as a young person. And when I encountered the Baha'i Faith, which validates all of these religions, I felt that it clarified all of those experiences for me. In addition, it gave me purpose for continuing in my life, for continuing my growth and continuing my education.
My husband and I are both Baha'is, and we're raising our child up in the Baha'i Faith. So for me personally, the greatest joy is that we're creating a life that is based on the Baha'i teachings, which are really all about the unity of all mankind, and that we are all brothers and sisters in the whole world. There's no difference between us. And so that's what brings me joy, that I feel like I am related to everybody, that I can love everybody, even though we may be different. We may come from different backgrounds, races, even religious backgrounds. It doesn't matter. We're all one human family.
When I came out of university, I felt sort of directionless. I really didn't know what to do or where should I focus my life. I think becoming a Baha'i, understanding that God has a plan for humanity, that we are in His hands, that He wants the world to become unified, that He's given us the tools, that really science is God's gift to humanity to help us bring this about. The technology can be used for good if you understand it. And so all of those things, little by little, sort of gave me hope that it was okay, that I could get a profession, that I could start serving humanity, that I could get married, that I could have children, that I had sort of a foundation to build on. And I didn't have to be kind of pulled in different directions or hopeless about the world.
Would you like to share a message for our global viewers?
I think the biggest message I would share with people is one of optimism and hope, that it's so hard to be out in the world and see what's happening these days, and to stay upbeat, to stay positive, and to see the good things. And I think that the faith is really very optimistic. The message of Baha-u-llah is that we are all one, and that peace is our destiny. We may get there sooner rather than later, or vice versa, and it's ours to work on, but it is the promise of the Baha'i Faith.
I think we should always know that we're all one family, and if you can love everybody who comes across your path, just like they're your brothers, then you can't go wrong.
The message is really welcome to the oneness of humanity, because we're all in it. No matter what religion you're in, doesn't really matter, because as a Baha'i Faith we realize that all the religions come from the same God. So we really have no prejudice or disunity based on anything, whether it's your race, your background, your culture, your religion. And I think we can all embrace each other and say, hey, we are part of one global community, and we can really make the world an earthly paradise. We have the capacity to turn the world into something very, very beautiful.
Our heartfelt thanks to the members of the congregation at the Bahai House of Worship for North American Wilmette, Illinois, USA, for speaking to us about the noble principles and practices of the Baha'i Faith and how they have brought blessings into your lives. Thank you, wise viewers, for joining us today on a journey through aesthetic realms. Coming up next is our noble lineage, right after noteworthy news. May you be graced with heaven's light and inspiration. For more details, please visit www.suprememastertv.com/AJAR.